Hello, everyone, and happy Kwanzaa. Hey, we made it, guys. The seventh day of Kwanzaa. Today is Imani, and we are so excited to be here. We have a new guest with us. We'll introduce him soon. And so, as you come in, go ahead and like and share the video on your platforms. We're going to be doing the same. And also, just share with us what you've learned in the last few days. Greet us, Habari Ghani. Habari Ghani, let's get this conversation started. So it'll be the four of us tonight. So hello, Miss Dot. Hello, thank you for joining us, Miss Jennifer. Imani, you said Habari Ghani, so I know I'm supposed to say Imani because we're gonna get this process correct. Thank you, Elder Kafele, for correcting me last night with Kuumba. I was saying Kumba, Kaumba.
Umba.
Getting one of those syllables. I appreciate
I
you.
was trying to spell it phonetically for you via text.
Hello there, Doctor. You did good. You did good. You did good.
Yeah.
Hello, Dr. McKeesey. Thank you for tuning in.
My brother McKeesey, man, we gonna link up at some point.
Oh yeah. That's a must.
Yeah. Come on in, folks.
Hello. Oh, Nay. Thank you last night for that phenomenal conversation you had with me. You and Dr. Sean, both of you are traveling today. That's why they're not with us now, guys. They're traveling. Dr. Sean, as he mentioned, is going to New Mexico. And I think Onay is on his way back to school, if I'm not certain, but he is on the highway. So thank you, Onay, for that phenomenal conversation last night.
Powerful. Powerful.
You know, I called them the young gunners, Dr. Principal Kafele. We the old school, they the young gunners. I felt good last night. I felt young last night.
Yeah. Well, Principal Rye, he right in that category with them young gunners.
Right.
Yeah, it's a collective working responsibility. We all in this together.
That it is.
Right.
That it most certainly is.
That's right.
So Dr. McKeesey says definitely Principal Kafele.
Yeah.
Yes. Imani, Miss Tammy, thank you for being with us every night. Hey there, BER family. One of the original with me, Miss Vicky Baxter out of Buffalo, New York. She has been there from the beginning. Wow. Vicky literally has been there since we started the Facebook group in 2015, and I appreciate her so much.
And the weather's been a little warmer up here, so she's probably doing better with that snow in Buffalo.
Yes. We would say it has been very impactful the last 6 nights. It's been a very impactful conversation. I've been reflecting and having conversations with everyone else. Hey, Dr. Angie out there in old sunny California. And I can just tell you guys, like I've said already several times, several people have told me, like, I do Kwanzaa, I practice Kwanzaa, but it really hit differently this year. And that was exactly what our purpose was. So happy that we are accomplishing our purpose. Glad to hear that your streets are clear, Miss Vicky, finally. Hello, Mr. Keith. Thank you so much for joining us. That's Principal Kafele's town.
Oh, yeah,
Orange.
That's home, man. My brother, Keith Hinton. Good to see you. Happy Kwanzaa, Barghani. My man, that's Principal Josh Tovar out there in the Dallas area, Garland, Texas. Good to see you.
MPA Jaguars. Okay.
Yeah. That's when you see that Jaguar, that's him.
You know what our new saying is going to be? I think it was Terica that told us, Latammy, learn to teach to learn. So yes, we've all been learning so much, Miss Vicky. We're learning to teach and teaching to learn. So yes. Yeah, Imani, Mr. Mark, thank you.
Matter of fact, Principal Rye, you were on with Josh, right?
Yeah, we had a good session, Josh.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah.
We talk about the future work and learning in tech.
Yeah.
Yes, we are excited to for you to join us, Miss Latanya, and it is only the beginning. So thank you, Miss Ufedo. Thank you so much out there in Charleston, South Carolina,
Yeah, good to
the
see you.
ancestral capital of
Yes.
America. All right, Ashe, Ashe.
We got folks on here been rocking with us since the first day.
Yes, been
Yeah.
enjoying and feasting on this series. Asante Sana, thank you so much for that, Mark.
Yes, sir, Mark. Since the first day.
I just had to yell at my godson and sons. They are so loud in the background. I know y'all hear them back there. I'm like, it seems, Ron, the more I talk, the more they talk. The
Yeah.
louder I try to get to block them out, the louder they get over me. Listen.
They're not too
So
loud, though.
they're not too loud. Okay, good. So learn to teach, teach to learn. Something that really, really struck me that one of our participants said, one of our viewers said, Principal Kafele, that creativity comes out of necessity, comes out of need.
That's right.
And when you look at history, it was always that someone was trying to solve a problem or fulfill a need when they are most creative. And I thought that was pretty powerful. I think that was MPA Jaguars, but or either Mr. John, but that is so true.
Principal Doc McKee, Vegeta, good to see you.
I hope that gumbo is good. No black eyed peas.
Hey, send that gumbo over here.
Everybody I know here in Florida cook black eyed peas. There was no gumbo.
Right, greens and black eyed peas, right?
Yes.
My man, we got Jersey in the building, Brick City. What's going on, Khalil? Did you have a Karamu last night?
That's my sorrow and one of my newest sheroes, Miss Anisha Jacko. She's a part of the OSG family, which we'll talk about. Hello, Soror.
It's Jacko, Principal Jacko. Come on, jeez.
Yeah, absolutely. Dr. Barfield, definitely. Tell you about that situation with that school, too.
She said she fixed that as well. She did gumbo and black eyed peas and collard greens. You were in the kitchen.
I want to be at that Karamu, at that feast.
Oh, you went to Plainfield? Okay, all right. That's one of my other stopping grounds.
All right, Dr. Angie. So does anyone know where that tradition comes from? She said she had her peas, greens, and sweet potatoes. How did that one come about? Do any of us know?
I'm not sure.
Only that it goes back to the enslavement period.
That it just goes back. Like
specifics on it.
Like what is that?
My sister Avenger in the building, Principal Leon, Coney Island.
Good evening, Coney Island in the building.
And I know they enjoyed you as well, Dr. Chica and Dr. Shika. Chica and Shika were in the house.
Yeah.
Hello, my beautiful Sora. This is one of my realtists. I told you guys about realtists. When we weren't able to be realtors, we had to become realtists. And so we assist Black people with buying, selling, and investing in real estate because we know home ownership is the first step to generational wealth. So welcome, Sora LaDonna. African inspired.
There you go.
Ashe. Yes, it was African inspired. You know, one thing that I was talking to some people about, Dr. McKees and I actually had this conversation too. And Principal Kafele, you and I talked about this. We don't want anyone to ever think this is just African American. This is the Black, right? Community, the Black family.
Diaspora.
So, the diaspora. Yes, not just African American. And so that is so important to know. And thank you, Miss Donna, who always supports and promotes learning. So I appreciate you sharing. And Imani to Bridges Enterprise. And so it's 8:10. And so in order to not prolong the conversation any longer, we're going to get started. And I'm going to start off by introducing ourselves. I'm going to go last while I'm sharing. I'm going to let the gentlemen introduce themselves first. And since we have a guest, we'll start with Principal Ra. Principal Ra, will you let the family know who you are?
Absolutely. First, just got to give my honor to you, sis, for allowing me to be part of the community, and just to the whole tribe, the whole community. Thank you for allowing me to be in community with you all. For those who don't know me, my name is Amen Raw. Many know me as Principal Raw, and I'm quite honestly, I'm on a mission to revolutionize the educational system. I'm born and raised from Compton. I come from a family of educators. My father is known as Professor Amin Raw. He actually hired the creator and the founder of Kwanzaa, Dr. Maulana Karenga, and built the Black Studies Department at Long Beach State University. I was a founding principal up in Watts, the youngest founding principal in LAUSD history, opened up a school and had two back-to-back 100% graduation rates. And then now I'm here with my good brothers, my good colleagues, and a wonderful, wonderful hostess to talk to you about the 7 principles of the Nguzo Saba and how we can collectively work together to improve our nation, but improve the world.
Yes, I love it. You guys heard who he is. He official, y'all. He's official.
Yeah.
He is a part of the Off School Ground or OSG family, which you guys have heard me mentioning a couple of nights this week that we'll talk more about. But it just goes right into what we've been talking about collective works and responsibility and cooperative economics. And so I am so excited about the potentiality of OSG and BER together. And so with that being said, Dr. Chika, you're next.
Yes, wonderful to be here with you all. My name is Dr. Chika Akua. I am a teacher transformation specialist and leadership strategist with the Teacher Transformation Institute. I'm also an assistant professor of educational leadership at Clark Atlanta University, one of our great HBCUs. So if you're looking at continuing your graduate education, whether it's for a master's or a doctorate, please keep us in mind. We do have online programs as well. Shameless plug.
Principal Kafele.
Baragani to everybody. My name is Principal Kafele. Also, my name is Baruti Kafele, known as Principal Kafele. But just good to be here. I'm a longtime educator going back to 1988 as a teacher, then a principal, now a full-time consultant speaker. And just passionate about the work and glad to be here with you to close out Kwanzaa 2022.
And I, for those of you who do not know, am the CEO and co-founder of Black Educators Rock. Black Educators Rock, as I always say, is so much more than a Facebook group. However, we were founded on the Facebook group. We have over 150,000 Black educators collectively across our platforms. We have a general group, we have state groups, we have content-related specific groups, breakout groups. And so we just encourage, inspire, and uplift one another on those pages. And because of that, I thought it was necessary for us to create the nonprofit. And so the Facebook group was created. 100,000 educators later, we started the nonprofit. That same year, we had the idea of hosting an inaugural conference. We do professional development every summer. We are proud to say we've been doing that since 2016, even through COVID. We did it virtually. And we are so excited to be hosting our 8th annual. And it's our 8th, even though we're only 7 years old. It's our 8th because our first year we did a conference. Who knew? And so we'll be having a conference July 13th through the 16th in Jacksonville, Florida. And I am proud to say that we will be partnering and collaborating heavily with Off School Grounds, which I'll let Principal Ross speak a little bit about who they are, because he's better to speak about that than I am. And so Off School Grounds, you guys heard me mention them about the principals, the assistant principals, superintendents, and community leaders. And so with that being said, I'm going to pass this baton to you, Principal Ross. Can you tell them just what that is, what Off School Ground is?
Yeah, All School Grounds was birthed by the phenomenal visionary leader, Dr. Dennis McKeesey, and his wife, Denise, to bring forth a coalition of educators, leaders, community activists to bond together every Thursday at the meetup to come up with best practices to innovate, cultivate, mobilize, and organize to revolutionize education. It is like the church for education. Like you can't put nothing, you can't really describe it. If you ever been to that family reunion and you know you ain't talked to your cousin for over 20 years, but as soon as you connect with them or you connect with her, you like it never stopped. That's what OSG is. It's have 4 pillars, 5 pillars, I believe, and we having a leadership conference happening in March where we bringing those best practices not only in Zoom, not only in the 4 walls of a room, but to spread it globally from work in Tanzania, from work in the British Virgin Islands, internationally. It is now a global organization. So shout outs to Dennis, shout outs to the whole tribe that's in here, Dr. Pia Davis, and a thank you, Dr. Chester, for allowing us to collaborate so we can show the world what collective work and responsibility truly is.
And to his point, 2 things about that. Black Educators Rock will be participating in that. We have several of our speakers, like Dr. Chica is one that we had invited. But we have some others who will actually be attending to present at the it's called Transformational Leadership Conference. So that's for assistant principals, superintendents. So it's leadership. And so we're super excited about that. That's in March. And so then we'll have our conference in July, which OSG will also participate in. And so we are super excited. And the thing about OSG, it was created out of a need. Dr. Dennis, we created Black Educators Rock out of the need to uplift and educate educators, because teachers, they were tired. They were talking negatively. He created OSG because of that same reason. He was just trying to uplift a community that needed to be uplifted. And so creativity comes out of necessity, comes out of need. And we are super excited about it all. And so, yes, Principal Kafele could not make it. So we're going to miss him at the transformation, because you guys know he's booked a year and a half out. I'm thankful and honored that, we get penciled in every year.
Oh, please.
Yes,
I definitely wanted to be there too, and I just couldn't juggle it.
What's the date for that, and what city?
It's going to be March, I believe, 17th and 18th in New York at Columbia University.
Yes, and it is their inaugural conference. And so I am assisting in making sure that goes off well. I'm excited about helping. He has some phenomenal women and men over there in OSG. And like I said, we'll be doing some more sessions about Kwanzaa, continuing these conversations, bringing on new guests, and making sure that we are implementing the things that we learn, not just talking about them, but implementing them. And so you will get to meet Dr. McKesey and some of those others that you're seeing on there, Principal Jacko. There are several others. And so we are super excited because we're bringing that bridge. Principals, assistant principals, educators, that we said last night, there was a disconnect. There's this created narrative for them to be us versus them. We're going to ensure that is no longer, because we, again, are the solution that we're seeking, right?
No doubt.
Absolutely.
So with that being said, I want to just take a moment to just reflect on the first 6 days, talk about what we've garnered, what we've learned, what has impacted us the most. And then let's talk a little bit about faith, Imani, principle number 7. And so Principal Ra, I know you're just joining us, so I'll let one of the elders start us off. And so Principal Kafele, just talk a little bit about what the last 6 nights have meant for you.
Yeah, this is in terms of the nights, as I keep saying, this has been a powerful experience, I think, for the folks who have been tuning in as well, because there's so much misinformation about what Kwanzaa is, what it isn't, who Dr. Karanga is, what he isn't, all that kind of stuff. So it's given us an opportunity to just have those conversations about the principles, about Kwanzaa, and how whatever your religion may be, there's no contradiction with you being a celebrant, a practitioner of Kwanzaa, and particularly the Nguzo Saba. But in terms of myself, this was the first year I didn't light the candles. The Kanara is sitting right over there. But I didn't light the candles this year because I was in a different spirit this year. This year, just personally, nobody around me would really see it. But I got deeper into the Nguzo Saba, like on a very individual basis, just me, right? Unity, self-determination, collective work and responsibility, cooperative economics, purpose, creativity, and faith. Just intensely focused on those 7 principles as it relates to me and my relationship with the world. So that's kind of where I've been. But I want to say this as well. I pulled off the shelf because there's a lot of people, they hear Kwanzaa, but they don't know the founder, right? The founder and the folks who were around him when he founded Kwanzaa in 1966. So this book here, let me put it up close. You will not find this book right? This is the original joint, right? And it's very thin, it's very raw, and it's very authentic. You know, a lot of people ask me, "Can I borrow it?" I'm like, "No, no," because there's none out here, right? It's probably if you go to Amazon and if they have one, they'll probably charge you hundreds of dollars for it. But this is as far as I'm concerned. Even if Dr. Karenga said otherwise, this is the one he wrote in his original thinking. So I value this one. And then later on, this one, this is you can get it, but it's not current. The one in Chica's hand is the most current. But in terms of someone who's been around Kwanzaa as long as I have been, we're going back to 1984. That I like to see how, in terms of Dr. Karenga's thinking, it has evolved.
Hmm.
Um, just the way he writes, which is very different from this, right? But if you want to understand Karenga, say in the 60s, in the 70s, you got to somehow get your hands on his writings from back in that time. So this came out later, and then the one that Dr. Akua just held up is the most current Kwanzaa book, right? But what people need to understand is Dr. Karenga is not just Kwanzaa. Like, here's another one, and I won't get into all the specificity of these books, but the book of Coming Forth by Day, right? Powerful book. The Hosea, which I don't think that Dr. Karenga speaks anywhere without mentioning the Hosea, right? Kemet in the African worldview, another important one. You can't talk Karenga without talking Kawaida, right? So Kawaida philosophy, and then you also can't talk Karenga without talking Introduction to Black Studies. Now, this is the most recent one. I don't know where I'm looking at my son. I don't know where my original is, right? But there's this original with a green cover, and that was like my Bible. But I'm saying all that to say, and then I'm a pass this mic on.
Don't forget the Oduifa, the ethical teachings of the
I mean,
world.
it's more. It's more.
Yeah.
I mean, the man has been writing and writing and writing. But and you're absolutely right. But I'm saying that for the folks who are on with us live and the folks who will see the video later, because I notice each of these videos get a lot of views after the broadcast. Study Dr. Karenga, right? Study him, study his works, and understand that Kwanzaa is a piece of him. It's not the totality, right? There's so much more in terms of the man's a historian with not one doctorate. He has 2 doctorates, right? And he's been doing these Kwanzaa. If you go to Roland Martin's Facebook page, he's been doing each principle each day, right? With Mark Thompson. So you can see him now, right? He doesn't travel a lot now because of his age. I think he's about 81 now.
Yep.
But there's just a lot out there. So I just wanted to put that out there.
And can I say this? Can I say this real quick?
Absolutely.
You know what, Principal Kafela, thank you for saying that, because it's very important when we're talking about history and we're talking about the Nguzo Saba principles, that we also give that man his flowers for what he's created.
Yeah.
Like, I'm lucky enough to have grown up with Dr. Maulana Karenga. Like, my father and Dr. Maulana Karenga talk like every day. And see, what you also didn't say was that he still has the US organization that practices Kawaida out here in Crenshaw, right? Off of 48, that's still practicing, that's still collectively bringing people together to organize them for the betterment of Black people in our country, right? So when we think about actually acknowledging, like, this man is still alive, right? And no matter what side of the fence you feel on off of history and what pieces of him that you want to really focus on, understand the totality of what it took to fight, to create something while the opposing didn't want it to happen. So when the whole point of the first principle, unity, is to charge ourselves to go through this experience not as an individual. We go through it as a unit of change, right? As a collective. A lot of times you self-determination, you think about that's second. Community determination has to be first. Right, so that's the point of unity, and I just want to thank you for saying that for Dr. Maulana Karenga and for the work that he's done from the Introduction to Black Studies, for the philosophy of Kawaida, from the US organization. Thank you for that, Dr. Principal Kafele.
Yes, sir. Appreciate you,
Dr. Chica. You were going to speak on how it has impacted you next.
It's impacted me tremendously, because when I look at the the things that I've accomplished that I'm most proud of, I couldn't have accomplished those things without practicing each of the 7 principles. Even writing my book about Kwanzaa, I didn't realize I would have to practice each of the 7 principles to actually get it in print. So much of what the work that we do is rooted and grounded in the Nguzo Saba, and it's like second nature in terms of sharing it with people and putting it into practice. But there's always an opportunity to take it to another level. So just very thankful. And you know, when Principal Kafele was going down those different books and said that Dr. Karinga has not 1 but 2 earned doctorates, 2 earned
Earned. Thank you for that.
who having gone and earned 1 doctorate would even want to consider trying to earn another one. Oh, that's right. We talked about that. So you might be doing it. So go ahead and do it. It's good. But I mean, that's just a whole different level right there when you do that. So kudos. And this brother is a scholar par excellence. In terms of the research that he's done, I use it a great deal in my research and in my dissertation and other writings. So I can't say enough about the contributions that Dr. Karinga has made.
So that was okay. And so that's what the last 6 days. And were you finished? I know you talked about Dr. Karinga. Did you want to say anything about the last 6 nights?
Oh, for the last 6 nights, first of all, I want to thank you for the consistency of doing it each night, because you'd be hard pressed to find some place where this kind of dialogue is happening each night of Kwanzaa, where we are able to do such a deep dive. And it's so very important because we hear the principles, but we don't oftentimes get a chance to do a deep dive into what they meant to him and why he chose those and what it should mean for each and every one of us. One of the things that I found on this journey, when we talk about consistency, is that consistency is key, because for those that may not agree with you up front, when every time they encounter you, they see you still doing the same type of work consistently. One of the things that I found is that it brings people over into your corner, because they say, I'll never forget, this was after my first book came out in 95, and I had left Newport News, Virginia, where I was teaching, and moved to Atlanta, came back to Newport News just to visit. And I went back to my old school. This is like 2 or 3 years later. And I remember running into one of the former teachers I used to teach with. And when I came back, I had 2 more books that I had written. And she just looked at me like, wow, you're still doing this. I'm like, yeah, it never would have occurred to me not to keep doing this. And now I've been doing it over 30 years. But I say that to say the consistency. There's so many people who are fly by night, here one day, gone tomorrow. But to have the kind of staying power that Black Educators Rock has, and that you have, Dr. Chester, in doing this, speaks volumes. And we can see by the chat box that people are really being blessed by the conversation over this past week.
Thank you so much, Dr. Chika. Thank you, Principal Kafele. Principal Ra, I know you haven't been a part of our conversation, but you can talk about it. I mean, you've been next to the man himself, what this means to you.
You know, if I didn't have this long sleeve on, I actually had a Nguzo Saba principles tattooed in my inner arm. You got to say, like, I grew up with a father that was a Black nationalist. So the 7 principles of Kwanzaa was a philosophy of our household. And it's not just something that we celebrate for 7 days at the end of the year. It's something that we live by. And Dr. Mala Karenga will correct anyone every single day. Don't let this be just something that you do temporary, where it's like double dutch. You want to hop in and hop out when you want. This is reality. This is a philosophy. Like, the reason why Dr. Chester is so consistent that you are able to do that is because it lives in you. It's a philosophy. So for me, these last 6 days was a reminder. It was a refresher. It rejuvenated me. It empowered me and grounded me in my philosophy and in my upbringing. If you're new to the Nguzo Saba principles, get rooted in it, right? Get rooted with brothers and sisters that's already rooted in there, so you can deepen your roots. So now you can collectively put on that journey where this is not just a 7-day-a-year thing. This is 365. This 24 hours. This is a whole entire philosophy. So for me, the last 6 days going back, my brother is named Kaumba. right? So creativity, like his name is Kaumba. So we embody that. So it's just that reminder of, you know, if everyone does a little, no one does a lot. Think about it. I'm 12 years old, 7 years old. That's what my father would talk to me every night. Like, son, if everyone does a little, no one does a lot. That's collective work and responsibility. So it's just that reminder when I see, you know, the black, green, and red of Marcus Garvey. When you think about that, it thinks about collective work. It thinks about unity. It thinks about Imani faith. It thinks about you have to be rooted in it and knowledgeable and aware so you can continue on this journey. And I'll leave you with this. My father always told me this. He said, you know, son, you may not feel that you are in the war, but understand that you are at war. And that is a spiritual war and a philosophical war that's happening every day. So I challenge everyone to make sure that you are empowered and with the knowledge and awareness so you can fight the philosophical war that's happening every day, especially being here in America.
I
That's
say, I
powerful,
love it.
powerful.
I
Ashe,
love it.
yes. And to your point, just the fact that you have had the privilege and honor and that type of learning to grow up in it. For me, as I mentioned the last few nights, this is like I've known Kwanzaa. I didn't learn it as a child. I learned it as an adult, but it never ever hit me until now. Doing this series, and literally it had to be a God thing because I woke up and said, "Oh, I want to do Kwanzaa with Black Educators Rock. We need to do Kwanzaa." After I read Principal Kafele's post, is what actually made me say, "Oh, we need to be deeper than just lighting the candles and setting up the display. We need to have a true conversation about it." And so I reached out to the two that I knew that knew the most about it within our organization. And that was Dr. Chika and Principal Kafele. Thankfully, they never tell me no. And
Yeah.
so what that has been for me is just, I mean, it has, like you stated, reinvigorated, relit my fire, which always burns inside of me for my Black people, for my community, for education. And so it is about a recentering and a regrounding. And it's so crazy how your words echo many of my sentiments, although you haven't been on with us, because we've been saying this is not a 7 day put your display up. This is an everyday thing. It has to live in you. You have to make sure you're focusing on this. And Principal Kafela has said we have to be intentional about living out these principles to the point of we know that we're going to be doing something at the Rock Conference. But then Dr. McKeezy told me, no, you need to be doing something monthly with the organizations to seeing how we're implementing them. My biggest takeaway has been let it not just be talk. Let it manifest in some way. As I stated last night, knowledge is not power. The implementation of knowledge is power. So many of us have stated that we learned so much. It hit differently. Wow. Now, what are we going to do with that? Are we just going to hold on to that, or are we going to create something out of that so that it keeps manifesting not only within us, but within others? Like I said last night, we owe our children better. We've dropped that baton. I called Dr. McKeesey my life coach. He's my life coach. And so he and I had the conversation and he asked me some challenging questions, Principal Kafele, and I had to still stay true to myself. He asked me, do I think that I could get something from other races? And I told him, no, I don't. I think I've always believed that everything that we need as Black people is within us. Now, my analogy, we know the baton has been dropped. It was a bad pass. It was a bad handoff, right? But I don't think that we have to go get it from anywhere else. We just have to pick that baton up and create what we want and continue this race. And so I'm looking forward to organizations like OSG and those of us who are individually with our organizations, Teacher Transformation, Teach, Hustle, Inspire. There are a ton of them. I'm looking forward to us all doing work together, collectively, and removing any egos, any expectations that are not communal, right? Hopefully, we all have communal expectations. So I really do believe that 2023 is going to be a phenomenal year. Someone posted out that, that these numbers represent 7. We know 7 is biblical. And so I'm just looking forward to what's to come. And
Yeah.
so that is, hey, Keena Walker. Keena Walker is another Black educator, right? Awaken the Genius, that we love the work he's doing. He's still in the classroom, but he also speaks. And
Yeah.
so we are just as proud of you, Keena.
Yes, sir. Good to see you. Go Dogs. I thought about you last
Oh,
night.
yes, right. Oh,
And
yes.
let me say this too, Doc. It's interesting the particular days that Kwanzaa falls on because the first 6 are in December, but then that last day today is in January. So for me, Kwanzaa and a lot of it, because of when it falls in on the calendar, becomes my launch pad into the new year. And when we talk about the new year, I don't confine King to the holiday or his birthday, but for me, January is King month. So then that King month takes me into February, Black History Month, with knowing that Black history is 365, but there's this month where we put this particular spotlight on it. But then there's Malcolm within that February, right? And then right into March, and this is just for me personally, because then Selma with March 7th, Bloody Sunday, which takes it right into April with Birmingham, with Dr. King full circle. So, but all of it for me, it launches right here in Kwanzaa, particularly on this day of Imani being New Year's Day. And now I'm ready to go. I got the fire, I got the energy, I got the intensity, I got the passion that I need to fight this battle throughout the course of this year.
Mm.
Ashe.
Yo, that's powerful. You know, I say this too, echoing what he said, is it's so powerful for everybody on to educate and to actually have conversations. Because earlier, Dr. Chester, someone put in the chat, how do we continue to pass the baton, right? How do we continue to teach while we learn while we teach, and continue this like ecosystem of what OSG is about? But you know, it's important for us to really bridge the gaps between next generations that's coming to bring the Nguzo Saba principles to the forefront. I embodied the Nguzo Saba principles when I opened my school. I didn't have to say that we're doing the Nguzo Saba principles; that it just lived in our school. I'm pretty sure both of these brothers, if they every school you've gone to, you can see correlations in regard to the Nguzo Saba principles that thrive in great orchestrated structures and systems. Now, going back to why this is important, Dr. Chester, is if I always say for us to really embody the seven principles, we have to also add Sankofa to that, right? And Sankofa means to know where we're going, we have to always remember where we came from. Why is this important, Dr. Chester? Because if we study history, we understand that there's always been co-conspirators, there's always been people who have been conscious leaders who may not be Black, who may come from different walks of life, who supported the cultural consciousness and the uplifting and elevating of Black people. Why is that important? Is because representation is valuable. You hear me say it all the time, but consciousness is priceless. So when we think about the Nguzo Saba principles and we think about the African diaspora, we also must include those people who have a cultural consciousness, who may not be part of that diaspora, but want to be joining in the fight for liberation and activity for us while we go through this struggle. My father always said that I'm born in the struggle and I'm gonna die in the struggle. And that's just something that he lived by. And I'm saying for us, we have to be able to be okay with those who are part of the struggle, who are conscious enough to participate in the struggle, but are conscious enough to know who to put in front of the struggle. And I think that's really important, Dr. Chester.
You know, I'm glad you said that. And we had our conversation back on my platform some time ago. There was no such thing as starting a school day when I was teacher and principal, but let me focus on principal because we're talking about an entire building now. There's no such thing as starting a school day without that entire school, staff, students, support staff, everybody standing at attention and reciting the Nguzo Saba in Kiswahili and English. It's just not going to happen. But we weren't stopping at the recitation of the Nguzo Saba. As you just said, we building a school, public school, around the Nguzo Saba, around the seven principles. So it's a beautiful thing when 20, 30 years later, and them kids are all adults, and they find me on social media and talk about the significance of how the Nguzo Saba was infused into that school, infused into all aspects of life in that building, right? That's the reward That's that reward you wait 20, 30, 40 years for to hear, because because they may be too young to really embrace what's happening. So now they'll come back at age 30, age 40 and say, man, Kafele, you were taking risk. I hear it all the time. You were putting your career on the line for us.
Yeah.
I said, yeah, but y'all were too young to understand that. So I didn't tell it to you. I just had to be myself. I had to be authentic. This is how I dressed as a principal, right? So in the public school system, myself and my VP. So because it was more than just talk. It was use the word you use, Principal Ra, embody, right? We ain't faking the funk, right? We gonna embody this thing so that young people can embrace its authenticity. Kwanzaa, we're gonna do the 2-hour assembly. Kids gonna perform, and then the culminating activity, the principal's gonna walk on the stage and break down those principles more than we do in the morning, and then take those symbols and break those down. We got it all on video. I need to put it online one day, but that's the way we treated this thing. It was probably, someone may say it's probably revolutionary, particularly in my era of when I did it. Now we're in a time when, wokeness, right? So there's a different kind of consciousness out here. But in the time that I was doing it, I mean, if I brought a Dr. Leonard Jeffries, and I don't mind saying this public, if I brought a Dr. Leonard Jeffries to the school, superintendent knew I was insistent upon bringing him, but they say, let's not put him on the agenda though, right? Let's just slide him in, right? So, all right, that's what you got to do, then do it. But I'm bringing him in there, right? So appreciate you saying that, because it just jogged my memory of those special moments for me.
And for me, let me say this. Let me make sure my point is clear. Allies are cool. Allies, because of course, as I stated with Dr. McKees when we had the conversation, they're the gatekeepers. It's impossible for us to do it without allies, right? Because they're the gatekeepers. So ultimately, we're going to have to incorporate them in some type of way. But I don't think that we need them for our footprint. For our blueprint. I don't think we need them for that. Our blueprint, I think that we can create our own blueprint and then incorporate them as needed, as we need certain things. But I will never go to a Jewish person and say, tell me how y'all, we call it collective works and responsibility, but tell me how the Jewish people make that work. I know how they make it work. They didn't have the history that we have. Their struggle is not our struggle, so theirs is different. And so I'm all for allies, but I am also for understanding that they can never be the leader for me. They can never be the one to tell me. That's just like now when we see white people telling us about Black children's problems. That's who consultants are. They're bringing in people who don't look like us to tell us about our children.
And getting paid well to do it.
And getting paid better than those of us who have lived it and experienced it and aren't consulting about it.
Premium.
So that is what I mean when I say that. Definitely understand you have to have allies, but play your part, play your role. And I don't need you to give me your blueprint, because I believe we have our own blueprint. Is what I want to say about that.
Well, so when I was listening to Principal Ra and Principal Kafele, and you heard them talking about their schools, you could hear the imani, you could hear the faith that they had in their students and their communities. And I want to read the definition of imani, since today is imani. It says, to believe with all our hearts in our people, our parents, our teachers, our leaders, and in the righteousness and victory of our struggle. And the reason that I wanted to read that specific definition is because one of my concerns to get the results that Principal Kafele got in his school, to get the results that Principal Ra got, they had to believe in our people.
Yeah,
we're at a point now where I hear conversations from people who don't believe in our people, who don't believe in our children, who don't believe in our parents. And just to be clear, there's plenty of reason not to believe, because we see all the madness out here, and there's plenty of madness going on. But if you're going to be successful in our communities, in our schools, with our children, you have to have more belief in them than they have in themselves. You have to see more in them than they see in themselves. You have to see more in the parents than they see in themselves. And this all boils down to imani, which is faith. That happens to be the name of my company, Imani Enterprises. Because when I first started it, I really didn't know anything about business. I was stepping out on faith, and I believed that we could have an impact on our people and on our communities. So this issue of Imani is really deep. And I also want to encourage those that are listening to engage in one of the rituals of Kwanzaa that's not very well known. It's usually done on this day, but if it's too late for you to do it today, it still works tomorrow if you do it. And it's called the cup of the bitter and the cup of the sweet. You take a small cup of something bitter. I would say use apple cider vinegar or something like that, because that's also healthy for you as well. And you ingest a small portion of whatever bitter tonic you want to use. And then you recall the bitterest and most challenging moments of the past year. And you talk it over with your family. And then you ingest something that's sweet, like grape juice, apple juice, orange juice, or something. But it's important that you not do that until you have discussed the bitter things and allow what you ingested that was bitter to kind of seep in, right? But then when you ingest the sweet and you tell the blessings of the past year and how you were able to persevere and still, though we went through a lot of challenges, we're still here and we were blessed in the process. It's kind of like what oftentimes is said at church: weeping may endure for a night, but joy comes in the morning. So that ritual of the bitter, the cup of the bitter and the cup of the sweet, is very transformational if you do that with your family and have that conversation about the bitterest parts of last year and the sweet parts of last year, and then look forward to talk about, what you're looking forward to experiencing this year as well.
Yes, yes. I'm going to speak on. I wanted to comment on what you just said, Dr. Chica. But I first have to get a shout out. If you guys don't know Freddie Taylor, he is someone who also supports Black Educators Rock. He's been to a few of our conferences. He has urban intellectuals. I don't know if you guys have ever seen the African American cards, the decks, the history. He has all types of African American inspired and not just African, but Black culture. Yes, that's it. Black history, playing card and decks and history. But he is phenomenal. And Freddie, thank you so much for tuning in. Can't wait to have you on a future show. He's taking trips to Africa, playing group trips to Africa, etc. And so, Freddie, just wanted to say hello. But what you said, Dr. Chica, was so powerful, and because again, that's the symbolic part of what we talk about when we talk about Imani. But we have to learn to move that stuff into the practical. And so, when you say that about the family, it makes me think about as colleagues or as people working together. What has been bitter for me in my work environment or in my community or in the organization that I lead or I'm a part of? What has been sweet, and having those conversations with people as well. And so making sure again that we're taking all those concepts and that theory and those things that are symbolic and making sure that we're implementing them practically into our lives. That is my ultimate goal with this.
And what you're doing is, like, for you as a realtist, that you're having an intergenerational impact, right? We talked before in one of our earlier programs about intergenerational cultural transmission, passing on the best of what we know to young people. This time last year, or in December of last year, my wife was in the hospital, and thankfully she's doing well now. But it just so happened, when we talk about intergenerational impact, one of her nurses happened to be one of my former students. And so when she recognized me and I recognized her, we were very happy to see each other. But she said something very interesting relative to intergenerational impact. She said, I don't know what's going on in these schools now. My kids come home with these assignments and everything, and they don't learn anything about our history or our culture. And I have to tell them about Kwanzaa. I got to tell them about Malcolm X and she starts running down this whole list of things that she learned in my class from me. And she's telling my wife at the same time and saying, I don't know what's going on in these schools now. I said, hold up, time out. What's going on in the schools now is pretty much the same as what was going on then. Those things that you learned in my class, I infused that into the curriculum. That wasn't in the curriculum. And I caught a lot of flack for doing so. So we have to understand that the teacher is the curriculum by their consciousness. There's that word again. The teacher is the curriculum, and we have to be the ones to infuse these things into our lesson plans and into what's going on in the schools to make that intergenerational impact. But again, it goes back to having faith in our students and in our parents and in our teachers and in the righteousness and victory of our struggle.
But Dr. Chika, when you speak on that, you know what I actually hear when you say it? I hear, again, because we've talked about this week, there are educators who truly want to be able to do what you guys did in the classroom, what Principal Ra is doing and impacting communities. They don't know how because they're not as well learned. They're not as well, educated. They're not as well read. And so I have a desire, but I don't have the capability. And so what I heard when you were speaking is we have to create workshops to assist them in infusing these things into their curriculum. We have to help them and show them how to do it. Because again, I do believe that most people want to do better. They just don't know how to. And that's whatever level you're looking at, community, education, family, etc. I think a lot of us it's a lack of education and a lack of knowledge. So I totally agree. The teacher is the curriculum, but when that teacher is not that skilled or not that experienced, they don't know how to do it. And then, we have this big talk about CRT and we know people are afraid of losing their jobs. And so, you two talk about the fact that whenever you go speak, you don't change your topic. You're going to talk about what you talk about, but it's the way in which you deliver that. And so that has to be taught, I think. Again, that passing of that baton, we have to make sure it's not just being spoken, but it's being implemented, that we're not just saying this is what you do, because that was sounded great. But me as let's say a second year teacher, like, well, how do I do that? So we have to assist them, I think, in those steps.
So Dr. Chester, you bring up some really, really great points. And going back to what the two brothers were saying, I think it's really important for us to bring to realization that we can have practical strategies that's implemented right now. Right. And what does that look like? That looks like the community in which you're doing right now. Dr. Chester, you said, you know what? I see a need. Let me go and address it. And let me go and get people that have this knowledge base to help with it. A practice that we do in our family is we actually take each principle and we have it actually identified with the first 7 months of the new year. Right. So you can say January, we're all going to be having affirmations of faith. Right. And we're going to, with our family, we're going to really focus on how we have positive affirmations of faith. And then next you go to unity, right? You go 1 through 6 after that. And each month you adopt a principle and you create affirmations with your class, with your organizational culture, with your family. Like, I'm a firm believer that the primary source of education still comes from the household. Yes, the teacher is the curriculum, but the first teacher is the mother and the father, right? The first teacher are guardians. The first teacher is starting to becoming that nurturing environment. So we still have to educate, empower parents to adopt these practices as well, right? Because now that's how we start building community determination. And we take a moment and then we spark a movement. So I would say, like, how do we create practical strategies for the Nkuzo Saba principles is something that's very simple. Hey, Faith, Imani, what are 30 positive affirmations that you guys can adopt and you share within your family? Can you share within your school? Can you share within your team? Can you share within your department? And you start having these practices that are connected to that community, to those principles. And I think that's something that could be powerful, Dr. Chester. Thank you for bringing that up.
And I do concur. Oh, go ahead, Principal Kafele.
Yeah, Principal Ra, you know your video is frozen, so or muffled. In some cases, frozen. Maybe if you go out and come back in.
All right.
Yeah, you're coming in choppy. We heard you.
Audio is fine.
Your audio is fine, but your video kind of, yeah. And to his point, guys, I'm gonna go say we still have to always, because the parents are first. We can never ever deny that, but we know a lot of times the parents are also lacking, right? They're lacking. And so we have to, again, remember that it may have to take place within the village, right? It may be auntie, it might be uncle, it might be, auntie that's not really blood auntie that has to do these things. So we have to always, because I didn't come from a family, Principal Ross said he grew up with a black, I'm like, wow, a black nationalist. The first time I came home talking about black pride, my mom was like, oh, what you doing? Like, we don't talk about that after attending my first year at FAMU. And so I think a lot of households, and we know the numbers have increased, we may not be getting that. So that's why I said also we have to be intentional about our attention to early childhood. I think that we as a race has not done a lot with that early childhood education. And so, someone mentioned, well, they may not even be in the daycares. Sometimes they're at grandmama house and they're at auntie house or they're at godmama house. And so we have to assist them and make sure that they're having curriculum and practical implementation of things as well. We actually have a Black Educators Rock homeschool page because one of the educators was like, I'm an educator, but I homeschool my children. And so we have to not forget those things as well.
Going back to the comments of Dr. Akua in terms of just the ability to go into a classroom and infuse African-centered history, culture, experience, etc., into the classroom, and then the whole comment about teacher being curriculum. Let me just give my point of view on that as well. I was able to be, and I think I could speak for Dr. Akua on the same thing. We and also Principal Ra are able to do what we did from that vantage point because of the foundation that we had in the reading. Right now, I've never taken a Black Studies course in my life. I wish I did, but I didn't. Right. Everything I know is from my personal library and the lectures that I attended and the videos that I watched and all that kind of thing. That's where my knowledge came from. But it transformed my psyche, my spirit, my soul, my belief, my foundation. So now I go into a classroom and ultimately a school as a leader. And the bottom line is that which I taught myself is pretty much all I know, right? I don't know to go in another direction because I haven't been trained that way. I only know what I know. So you compare that to that teacher who's in that classroom who's also Black, but doesn't have that historical foundation. So that teacher went through the same miseducation that everybody else went through and didn't have the intervention of either that Black Studies program or that self-education. So now you're in the classroom and you passionately want to see Black children succeed, but that's passion. But you may not have the historical foundation upon which to stand toward understanding that you're part of a continuum. And now it's your turn in that classroom, in that school, to move these children forward. So I looked at myself as a master teacher, right? From that African-centered perspective. And as Dr. Akua said, the teacher is the curriculum. Here's how I word that. I say the master teacher, like let me just get a document here. So we'll call this piece of paper. Let me make sure I got nothing with passwords on it. Yeah. So we take this piece of paper, right? And I say that this is curriculum. Curriculum is just a lifeless document paper. That's all it is. But see, I say the master teacher is not concerned about that because the master teacher, despite the curriculum, will go like this. Watch this.
Breathe life into it.
See, the master teacher is going to breathe life into the curriculum. So if the curriculum is Eurocentric, but there's no era, there's no year, there's no minute in American history where there's not a Black presence. We're in every era. We're in every decade. We're in every year. We're in every century. So the master teacher said, okay, it's Eurocentric curriculum, but I know the component of this period that is Black. So let me now infuse that while staying consistent with curriculum. I'll teach curriculum, but I'll make sure that I teach it correctly, honestly, truthfully, with integrity. But for me personally, that's because I've read. So as you were saying, Doc, that's where we come in the spirit of the Nguzo Saba, particularly Kujichagulia, self-determination, where we've got to make sure that the masses of our people are educated as to who that is in their mirror. And that's why, and I'll just go ahead and put this out here, Doc, that I had made that suggestion today that the conference is not just annual. The conference is every month in a different part of the country. Institutes where you got these young educators come to us who may not have that background, where we can begin. We're not going to have sessions on history, but we're going to have sessions where we talk about the importance of you infusing your knowledge base with history, so that you don't look at young people through a pop culture lens, but you look at them through a lens of struggle. It's important.
You know, is my video good?
Your video's not, but your audio is good. So go ahead.
Dang, man. Well,
You
listen,
must be on your phone. Principal Raw, you on your phone?
I'm not actually on my phone, but
Oh.
I say this, and I'm gonna try. Maybe I switch my hotspot real quick. But you know, Principal Kafele, what you said is really powerful. Like for those who know me, like I have a gold chain that says revolutionary educator, right? And I think what happens is, you know, all those books that people have read and going through, like luckily for me, I've had 35 years of a wealth of knowledge from a professor that have ingrained a lot of what others have read. And what
Right.
you found is that new teachers that have gotten in, they usually first hear about them, they learn about themselves in college.
Yes.
And then what happens when you start to learn about yourself and you realize that the K-12 system has possibly damaged you? You get angry. You get frustrated, you get mad, and now you're in front of young people, and a lot of times your practices, your pedagogy is radical, right? Because you haven't got that spook that's set by the door information to understand how do you be revolutionary, right? Understanding revolutionary is the impact you make and understanding the ecosystem around you and how it's built and how to deconstruct it seamlessly. Right? Like you got to understand there's a difference between being radical and revolutionary, right? And it's important for us that with that knowledge base that Principal Kafele has spoken about, is that gets you the confidence, but it also will get you in the right rooms with the right people to let you know that you're not alone. Because a lot of times we have a lot of educators. That's why Black Educators Rock is so great. That's why OG is so great, is because education, a lot of times we feel isolated. We feel by ourselves in that room, by ourselves, that we're the only person that see this cultural assassination that's happening in our schools. I have to speak up. I have to, you know, and then you're by yourself. And then we already know the Black Panther Party talked to us about it. That the powers are with people, the powers with numbers. But when you're by yourself, you don't feel very powerful. So then you try to be 1,000 people, but it's only you. And what happens? You become hyper exhausted. You become hyper frustrated. And then you become out of commission, and now you're no good to young people and no good to the fight. So we have to make sure that we had that knowledge base, we had that community, but we also, what you said, Principal Kafele, is we have that middle child. Like what J. Cole is one of my favorite rappers. He said, one thing about the men with the pen that's writing history, they always seem to white out their sins, right? And we think about K-12 education that way of, there's all this information and misinformation. Dr. Principal Kafele talk about, the miseducation of the Negro. Like this is real. Like that should be a hallmark book in K-12 education and talk to you about, like, hey, where are you at, right? But you have to be revolutionary in how you bring those things in. And I think it's important for us to really understand that in how we apply it in our everyday practice.
To Principal Ra's point, how we are revolutionaries, how we do what we do is as important as what we're trying to do. So I saw a comment from Brother Keen Walker. He said, be ready for the backlash, because some of us have lost our livelihood for being willing to do what Dr. Chika suggested. We're at war on behalf of our children. And so Principal Ra talked about the feelings of isolation that is possible to feel when you step forward to start doing these things. One of the things I learned from Amos Wilson's work is that the whole purpose of this society is to produce alienation and isolation among us. Because when you're isolated, you are now vulnerable and you become alienated, sometimes even from your own people. So one of the things that the conscious and revolutionary educator has to do is to build very quiet coalitions of conscience.
Yes.
So early on in my work, I was trying to be African-centered in a very Eurocentric way. I was trying to do everything myself. That's not our way. We're communal, we're cooperative, we're communalistic. And so what you want to do is build relationships with other brothers and sisters throughout the building to find out where they are in their consciousness and share different information with them. So I would put, different worksheets, activities, and things that I was developing. I would put it in their mailbox. Say, hey, if you like, I'm doing this in my class. Your students might like this too. And they would always come back to me. This is before I started writing books. This is what led to me starting writing books, because those same teachers would come back to me and say, man, I did that activity and my students loved it. Now, so nobody's asking you to change your name. Nobody's asking you to put on a dashiki. Nobody's asking you to walk in the building with the Black Power fist raised. As a matter of fact, please don't do that. We have to be very wise in how we in this revolutionary struggle, in terms of moving quietly oftentimes, but always moving with excellence, so that if and when you are confronted, nobody can question or challenge the fact that you are outstanding in terms of what you do and the outcomes that you're getting with our children.
Hey, Dr. Akua, I got something I want to say, but before I do, I want to ask you to do something.
Mm-hmm.
You just dropped the name. You said Dr. Amos Wilson. And I know that there could be folks on here that don't know that name. And there could be folks that are going to watch this later that don't know that name. Just give us a synopsis about Dr. Wilson.
Yeah, so Dr. Amos Wilson was one of our great Black psychologists, and he's also a social worker. Some of his important works would be, his first one in 1976 was The Developmental Psychology of the Black Child. And what he did was he went through and he demonstrated how Black children come into this life already at an advantage. Okay, there it is right there. The Developmental Psychology of the Black Child. Awakening the Natural Genius in Black Children, another one of his great ones. What is it? African-Centered Consciousness versus the New World Order. He's got another one. His big, thick book is Blueprint for Black Power. I got all these behind me as well. My favorite book by him, though, my favorite one, and I need to see if I can get it, because this is the one. It's not a very thick book, but when you read it, it's an absolute game changer. It has a yellow cover. Do you have that one, Principal Kafele?
Trying to see, because I got two different locations of stuff here, man.
I'm looking because I can usually pick it up. It'll come to me in just a
So
second.
again, let me tell you what I'm hearing, Dr. Chica, before you finish. I'm hearing you guys, because somebody asked, oh, what were the books that you were saying? I stepped away. We need a sequential, and I know Principal Kafele says he has it on his
Got that book list, yeah.
book list. Because guys, what has to happen, instead of watching Housewives and all the reality show, you got to pick up some books yourself, educators. You have to become educated so that we can. And I wanted to make sure while you're talking, Dr. Chica, Onay said this is definitely for him. There have been times when he's been moving too loudly. He says we have to be smart and conscious. And the revolution will not be televised. He's driving, so I knew exactly what he was trying to say.
Yeah. But let me make the point I was going to make. And by the way, I showed you all those Dr. Karenga books, and then my son just came down and put another one right in my hand.
Yes.
My eye, right? So it's just it's so many of them out there.
This is the one right here, The Falsification of African Consciousness. This little thin book right here will absolutely blow your mind when you find out what has been done to our minds. Amos Wilson, you can't go wrong reading anything by him.
You said the falsification of African consciousness?
Falsification of African consciousness. I know it's backwards on your screen, but maybe you can get a screenshot. But anything you get by him is a winner. But this one right here, if you had to choose one, this right here, you will not be the same after reading it.
I was speaking down in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, and some kind of way I mentioned Dr. Amos Wilson in my presentation. I was talking to principals, and someone in the audience said, "Do you realize his sister is still down here?" I said, "Really?" So they took me to her house. She passed a couple years ago, but they took me to her house, and I sat in the living room. And we talked for a while, took pictures, and and she just talked about her brother, brought out all these old pictures, and it was just an honor to be in that space, with the sister of the great Dr. Amos Wilson. But going back to what Keena Walker was saying about us getting into trouble, I don't remember the exact words you used, But here's what I want to say about that, because there are folks watching, folks who will see us later. I've been there. You know, I was suspended. Like the children get suspended from school. I was suspended as a principal. I was all over the television news networks as being a suspended principal. I was all over the radio, and I was the headlines in the newspapers before the internet got big. I had the termination hearing. But here's the thing. Here's why I returned back to work the day after my termination hearing. Because I had the wherewithal. This is going back to Nguzo Saba now to keep it relevant. I had the wherewithal to be aligned with the community. So when the stuff hit the fan, for me just being my authentic principal, Baruti Kafele, and got suspended, the community said, all right, we got this. Just sit home and watch TV or do what you do. We got this. So I was suspended for, I think, 4 days before the termination hearing. The parents and community, they took care of that. So when my hearing came, folks from all over Jersey, New York City, Philly, Connecticut, people drove long distances to be at my hearing to speak at that hearing on my behalf. So at the end of the hearing, the board voted, a 7-member board, 7-0. They say, you ain't do nothing wrong, right? Report back to work tomorrow, right? So my point is this. Had I not had all that community support, then they probably would have got rid of me. But I had so much support, so many allies, you know, that supported the work I was doing, who believed in the work I was doing on behalf of these children. I might add these Black children in the city of East Orange, New Jersey, that when the stuff hit the fan, oh man, we got you, Kafele. So
well, again, because you were living the principles, they were in action.
The
you know, there was the community, there was village. All of the principles were actually being lived, not talked about.
So I'll say to somebody out there, you got to make sure that you're not working in a silo, that it's not just you in isolation, because they could get rid of your behind. But see, when you are a part of a collective, then it's not just getting rid of you, it's getting rid of the whole collective, and they ain't getting rid of the whole collective, right? So again, like Dr. Akua said, you're not going in with raised fists, right? But there's work to be done. I always said, if the folks in the past who paved the way for us did the work they do, then what business I got punking out in 2022? See, so you and I gotta perpetuate that struggle ad infinitum, however long it takes. But you got to make sure that you got allies, people that got your back when the stuff starts hitting the fan.
Principal Ra, you wanted to add anything? You've been quiet.
Like now you gotta have results. I mean, you gotta be able.
Oh, you said my word. You heard what he said, guys? Because he's choppy. He said results.
Oh yeah,
yeah. You gotta have results. You gotta have results, but you gotta have community. And what Kafele, I mean, I think we've all been in it. Like if you done real revolutionary work, you cannot expect to not be challenged. If you're about this work, you're going to be challenged. You're going to be challenged by the system. You're going to be challenged by others. You're going to be challenged by even your own people that's saying, why are you doing it? Why are you deciding to be part of the struggle? Yeah. Why are you, do you know how easy it is to just say, you know what? I'm going to forget about that. And I'm going to go over here. I'm going to go over the mountain and just stay over there. A lot of people make that decision, but when you make the decision and when you are aware, you can't unsee it. You can't just turn it off and say, I'm no longer conscious no more, right? Like once you become awakened and you have your consciousness, it is hard to unsee it. So now what do you do to apply, right? Like it was hard to get rid of me as a principal when I said I've graduated 2 classes, 100% of Black students in Watts, right? Parents will rally up and say, how are you gonna get rid of this man for doing that when we just graduated 2 100% graduation rates that have been done, right? What Kafele is doing, I'm sure, like you have to make sure that you are also not being radical and revolutionary and reading scores is at 1%. right? Like it's gonna be hard. It's gonna be a hard case for you. So let's also understand that there's a level of community and consciousness that comes with results. What's the results of you as a father? What's the results of you as a husband? What's the results of you as a wife and a leader in a household, in a family, bringing people together? Because when we check, like 2023, we checking receipts, right? You can't just be on live talking social consciousness and behind closed doors, you Eurocentric, you all capitalist. Like no, let's make sure that you are living and embodying the spirit and understanding the nuance as well. So I just want to echo what Kafele said, and my good brother, and what you said, Dr. Chestnut.
Yes, what you just said was so important. Let me say it louder for those in the back, because you are coming in. Listen, don't be out here acting like you walk, talking this talk and not walking this walk. People now can check your receipts. Back in the day, people say, "Oh, I was doing this and I was doing that, and we did this," and there was really no way to confirm or negate it. But now all we have to do is check the receipts, and so you must be doing the work. That you must be involved with the community. You have to have community engagement, and you have to have results. And so that definitely was very, very right on time. Dr. Chika, I know you were going to chime in.
I would just say also, when we talk about, operating within systems that weren't created for us, play to your own strength. Like, you may not do things the way that Principal Rod does, or the way that I did, or the way that Principal Kafele did. Your personality may not be one where you're very outspoken or different things like that. Play to your own strengths. You may be outstanding at teaching math. So just make sure that anybody who comes through your class, make sure that they get it, and make sure that they get it well. Or you may be an administrator who controls budgets, making sure that the right amounts get to the right people for funding for certain programs and different things like that. So play to whatever your strength is. You don't have to be loud. You don't have to be outspoken. You don't have to be confrontational. I'm not even confrontational. I just do my work, and I try to kind of fly beneath the radar. Every once in a while I show up on the radar though. But people know who I am because I have a track record. So they already know if they're going to call me in, they already know what they're going to get. The funny thing is, Dr. Chester, the very same things that I used to get called into the principal's office. So Principal Kafele got called to the central office. I got called to the principal's office more than some of my, troubled students. But the very same things that we got in trouble for yesterday, people are paying us to come in and speak about today, because we stood on what we know to be the truth, and we were well studied, and we produced excellence, and we could articulate our position. And so that comes from a lot of study and a lot of practice. And that's the journey that we're inviting everyone to be a part of, and to walk that journey with Imani, which is faith.
Yes. Totally agree. And going back to that faith, and just because, again, understanding, guys, you got to believe. And so I want to talk a little bit about this. I'm glad it's perfect segue into what I wanted to say, Dr. Chika. You said faith, to believe with all our heart in our Creator, our people, our parents, our teachers, our leaders, and the righteousness and victory of the struggle. To believe with all our heart. I was having a conversation with one of my colleagues. His name is Dr. Cohen, and he's Buddhist. And so we were having a conversation, and I asked, because I was like, I don't know a lot about Buddhism. Do you believe in God? He said, no, I don't believe in God. I know God. He said, there's a difference between knowing and believing. And that, to me, what he was really saying was faith. He was saying his faith is so strong that he knows in his heart and in his soul. And so we as individuals, again, it goes back to all the principles. You first have to become unified in self-determination and understand your purpose and understand you, so that you can believe in all your heart in the Creator and our people and our parents and our teachers and our leaders. And so, and the righteousness and victory of our struggle. Understanding this, this righteousness and victory in the struggle, because that's faith, to know that we may not, say it again, Principal Rod, you said we're not in the war, but we're at war, correct?
Yeah, so you may not feel like you're at war, but you're definitely in a war, right? And you may not feel it physically, you may not feel it like, oh man, like that, but you're at war, right? Because when you think about the education system, when you think about media, right? Like social engineering and how media engineers your thoughts, and how now the algorithm in regard to technology. If you haven't looked at like going to Netflix and looking at some of the podcasts of Decoded Bias and all these different things that are engineering thoughts and perception and making it reality, it is really important for us to be aware of that. And just to echo Dr. Chester's, when we think about the Nguzo Saba, we think about actionable steps, and we're thinking about I'm thinking about OSG, our good sis. She always says, the evidence of learning is through application, right? And after these 7 days, don't don't say what you learned to Dr. Chester and to everybody. Say what have you applied,
Yeah.
right? What have you applied? I don't want to hear what I've learned. Show me the receipts in which you have applied,
Yeah.
right? Because application is what's important. And I want to say this while I'm here and I got the moment. I want to just really thank Principal Kafele. And I'm going to say why. I never even told him this. When we think about passing the batons, when we think about helping and supporting others, I remember when I first heard Principal Kafele speak, right? It reminded me so much of what I got from my father. And I went up, I took a picture with him. And I was a teacher at the time. I was still speaking across the country. And I came back and I had a discussion. I emailed him around, hey, I was writing a book. I was inspired to write a book. And I would love for him to get, advice and give me, words of encouragement. And without nothing, he reached out, boom, boom, bang. Got it done in regards of knowing his platform, and as a somebody who's just a kid from Compton, to have somebody of that stature be able to support. That's what collective work and responsibility is about. That's what, hey, you may not speak like a Principal Kafele. It may look totally different, but your respect will still be there. How I deliver and how I am, you're going to get me. Look at Dr. Chester, this is how I am. I'm coming with a Compton hat. I've got my gold chains on, but don't get it twisted. Don't get it twisted. I'm raised with this, but I'm just saying, Principal Kafele, what you do and what you represent for the culture, it's very important for you to get these flowers from me personally, because I want to let you know it really meant a lot. And that's what representation in regards to the Nguzo Saba principles look like.
I appreciate that immensely. Sante Sana, man. I appreciate that immensely.
Listen, that you keep handing me, y'all handing me the perfect ending to get ready to end it, because what does it look like? So that's the question we want you all to be asking yourselves as you go into 2023. So I said I learned a lot. Like Principal Ra has said, we've been saying implementation. What does it look like doing the work? What are the action items? Not just, I learned a lot, because he said you can learn a lot, but you have to, what was the last part of that? You said
apply it. The evidence of learning.
I said implementation. He said apply it.
Application.
Yes, you have to apply it. So learn a lot, but apply a lot, right? Yeah. So we really want you guys to be really, really intentional and conscious of what you've learned this week, what you're taking into the classrooms, what you're taking into your households, what you're taking back into your communities. And we're going to be having checkups on it. We're going to, have these things monthly. We're going to come together and talk about it, because we're going to make sure that we're walking the 7 principles, that we're not just talking them for 7 days, but we're walking in them, because this is how we create and be able to leave a better world than the one in which we got, than the one in which we inherited. So we have to make sure we are, again, being the change that we want to see, right? We have to be that. Creativity comes out of need. We have to be creative, innovative, and intentional about the works that we're going to do. For me, I know that, and I've been wanting it, Dr. Chica, Principal Kafele, Principal Ra, forever. It is collaboration. It's collective collaborations. And so I kept trying to do it like, okay, let me grab this person and grab that person. But now I know it has to be bigger. Black Educators Rock, OSG, and different entities. Okay, what are we doing? Let's put on this. Let's put on that. As Principal Kafele said, we have to do this all across the country. We have to do this consistently and persistently. And all it takes is collaborations. Hey, I'm not in the New York area, but you all are. Okay, somebody else is in the Carolina area. We're all going to Carolina. You guys are going to be the boots on the ground to get it ready. We have all of our speakers. We have all of our presenters. I say all the time that Black Educators Rock, listen, which we have some power hitters. And I know that OSG does as well. So why aren't we working together to put on our own conferences, right? We all go to these huge conferences all across the country all year round, where maybe 1 or 2 of the presenters look like us. think how powerful it is. And I said this, I think earlier last year when I said when we have several conferences, I think I said that Teach Jam. So now we have a Teach Jam in November. We have something else in March. We have Rock Conference in July. And we're building that calendar out where, you know, this may be the host organization, but the other organizations are a part of that as well. This is how we're going to get this work done. We have to stop talking about it, stop communicating about it, and start implementing it. So I am very, very excited about the future. Like I said, I think 2023 is going to be a year like no other.
Yeah, I agree.
Same here.
So gonna give you guys a chance to give parting words. I'm gonna start with you, Dr. Chika, then you, Principal Kafele, and then you, Principal Ra.
Well, in terms of action items, when we talk about actualizing the principle of Imani faith and believing in ourselves, our parents, our teachers, and in the righteousness and victory of our struggle, I want to encourage those that will be going back to school this week. One way to infuse the Nguzo Saba and Imani is to bring love and joy into the classroom. When your students left your classroom in December for the winter holiday break, some of them may have gone back to a home that was abusive, or may have gone to a highly toxic, volatile situation on the home front. Some of them may have been in situations where they were dealing with poverty, or been caught in the blizzard, or may have had their heat turned off, any number of things. But seek to make your classroom that place where love and joy abounds, where children want to be there. My wife used to run a school, and one of the interesting things in the school community that she created, whenever there was inclement weather and school had to be canceled, the parents would tell us that their kids hated missing school because they loved her class so much. So I want you to think, because sometimes when we have these kind of conversations, we can get so serious about it, and that's important and everything. But I really want to really re-emphasize this point about creating a spirit of love and joy in your classroom, loving on your students, giving them that hug when you see them, and letting them know that you're here for them, and asking them, how was their break and different things like that. But that's one of the most important things that I think we can do as educators, is to let them know that our schools and our classrooms are safe and sacred space.
I love it. Safe and sacred spaces. Assuming that a lot of the folks on tonight are educators, as you did, Dr. Akua, I just want to say this. I just want to throw a self-reflective question at you, as I always do. When you walk into that classroom and you look into the eyes of each of the young people, and I'm very deliberate when I say each as opposed to all, because I want to make sure that we account for every student in that room. So I always say each. So as you go into that classroom and you look into the eyes of each of the students, just ask yourself the question: are my students at an advantage because I am their teacher? Is there something advantageous about you being in that space versus somebody else? Could somebody else come into that space, your space, the room with your name on the door? Could someone else come into that space, take your students to places that you cannot? And see, you've got to know definitively. It's not a comparison. It's just you knowing you, that you're the right one for each of the youngsters. And if there's a leader on here, or a leader who will watch the video later, then I'll ask you to ask yourself the following question: is my school, is my team, is my department, is my division, is my district better because I lead it? So if you're a leader of a team, leader of a department, leader of a division, leader of a school, superintendent, leader of a district, or even board member, leader on that board, is there something about your presence that increases the probability that each of those youngsters will soar? I close by challenging anybody that sees this video. to ask yourself that question every day for the rest of your career. Not just today, but every day, at the conclusion of the day, at the start of the day, maybe even within the day. Just have your mirror and ask yourself, do I matter? Happy Kwanzaa to everybody. Habar Ghani. Let's make it happen in 2023.
Principal Ra.
All right. You know, I'm charging everybody to be revolutionary. If you don't know me, if you just met me tonight, I charge you to be revolutionary. And what I mean by that is taking these 7 principles and making an immediate impact on your life and the life of others that surround you, the life of those young babies in your classroom. See, this is the last day for the Nguzo for Kwanzaa, but it's not the last day for the Nguzo Saba. See, this is faith. And I'm talking to an educator right now who may have lost faith, who may have been struggling by themselves for a very long time. And whoever's that spiritual leader got you to this place today to get the healing that you need to have collective healing so we can be together for this struggle. But I'm also telling you this, Kaumba, creativity. See, creativity sparks innovation. And innovation a lot of times is the misuse of a tool. See, when you think about the misuse of things, a lot of times through our history, we misuse a lot of things that became innovative and have now became the staple in society, that now became the staple in our life. What I'm saying and what I'm charging everybody to do is to be revolutionary. And what I mean by that is change the world and don't let the world change you. Blessings.
Ashe. And for me, it is as Dr. Chika and Principal Kafele said, they were speaking from the lens of an educator, but you're so much more than educators. You're your mothers, your fathers, your sisters, your brothers. And so I'm asking you to ask those same questions and take those same principles that he, Dr. Chika, and Principal Ross spoke about, and make sure you're applying them in those 5 aspects that Dr. El Hakim spoke about when he was on: community, family, education, economics, and government. Make sure you are doing that in every space that you enter, not just one. Make sure that you're being your authentic self and you're bringing value everywhere. And everything that you learn, just continue to intentionally apply it. I know for me, I've learned a lot. Mine is going to be, of course, organizational. And so I'll be reaching out to many of you all who have been on the live saying, hey, let's have a 10-minute Zoom. Let's collaborate. Let's find out what you do. How can we help you? How can you help us? How can we partner and collaborate? Where do you fit at? Because again, we must be intentional. Principal Kafele said it earlier. Dr. Chika, I think it was, he was talking about be your authentic self. And Tracina said, oh yes, be yourself. So whatever you're doing in the space you're doing, we want to know what that is so that we know where to apply you when it's time for you to assist us and us to assist you. And so OSG is, again, principals, superintendents, assistant principals, community leaders. Black Educators Rock are all educators, the librarian, the teacher, the superintendent, the principal. So I know how those 2 are working together. I know about transformational education with Dr. Chika. I know that Principal Kafele focuses on aspiring assistant principals and principals. I know that Dr. Marcus Jackson comes in and does community engagement, and he also does helping your teachers to be staying engaged. And so we want to know other partners. What do you do? So we know how to plug you in. I know what Freddie Taylor does with Urban Intellectuals. I know what Mr. Keena Walker does with Awaken the Genius. No more will I just know those things. We will make sure that we're implementing and applying them in our new creation of creating a better space and place for our children. And so I am so looking forward to the work that we all are going to do together, collectively, cooperatively with the economics, because again, we're going to make sure that each of us is eating, because we know we have for too long fought for the crumbs that fall off the table. We need to be at the table creating our own feast. And I do think that we have everything that we need to do so. So with that being said, happy Kwanzaa. And I guess we're going to end with the Harambe 7 times tonight, right? So, all right.
Let's go. Harambe. 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 Harambe.
Harambe.
Hold that last one.
Harambe.
Harambe.
Thank you guys. Enjoy the rest of your evening. We will be getting with you soon. You can reach us at Black Educators info at blackeducatorsrock.org. Send us an email. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, etc. OSG, I will make sure to share their information on the website and on our pages. If you're an assistant principal, aspiring principal, Principal Kafele, everyone knows how to find him. He's the man. And Dr. Chika is already on the Black Educators Rock website as well. And so again, we look forward to connecting and collaborating. You guys enjoy the rest of your evening. Let's make 2023 a year like no other. Happy Kwanzaa.
Happy Kwanzaa.